Oh, sorry it took so long for this video to come out, but I got a new carpet. Don't worry, it was well worth the wait. Let's get started. Today we're going to be covering integers. So when I say integers, I don't mean like just integers. So let me talk a bit about how I learned code versus how you're learning code. When I learned code, I learned with a language called C, as well as a language called Java. And in these languages, when you make a variable, unlike how we could do it in our last video, where you could just make the variable and then you could use it for whatever, whenever, you had to declare the type. So in this case, the type we're going to be talking about today are integers, but also we're going to be talking about doubles and floats, because those are also numbers, and I just kind of want to put them all in the same little box because you're going to be using them for essentially the same things. We can also talk about longs and shorts. So let's go ahead and get started and explain the difference between all of those. In the case of longs, shorts, floats, doubles, and integers, the biggest difference is the amount of memory space they take up. In JavaScript, that memory space is already managed, so you don't actually have to declare a float, a long, a short, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. But it's good to know that if for some reason you're having issues with memory, or in the off case that you're doing something with numbers and it seems like the timing is off, which can happen in JavaScript, it could be due to how long it takes to sift through the memory, although it should be marginal. That shouldn't happen in almost all cases, really. So let's talk about numbers, I guess, mainly. In this case, I'm just going to show you some basic arithmetic, sort of kind of the things you can do with numbers. Let's start off by making some variables to use that make a little bit more sense than what you saw on my screen a second ago. Don't do that. Don't use capitals. Let positive, negative, not A. There we go. And notice I just auto-completed that. In the same way that you can do auto-completes in your Git terminal, you can also do the same thing here if you've installed the proper programs, like the linter that I showed you guys in the Atom episode and how to code from nothing. By the way, you can full select by control shift, left or right. That's what I was doing just then. If you noticed, I was doing weird quick stuff. It's good to know the quick hotkeys. Alright, so now that we've got some values, let's go through some basics. We can do addition. 3 plus 3. Let's do positive. Okay, now that I've finished making a bunch of stuff for you guys so you don't have to, you can go ahead and do a clone of my repository, or you can just go to my repository and copy and paste this into your variables folder and or file, variables file, and then you can look at all the kind of stuff you can do. Now, this is not in any way, kind of a full example of the capabilities you have, but this is just a general idea with just some sort of kind of numbers and stuff you can do. When you print this, or when you run this, it will look like this, like this, like this. It'll look like this. Okay, so I made some variables. Positive is a positive integer. Negative is a negative integer. 0 is just a 0. Decimal is a decimal. Not a number, nan, it's not a number. It isn't a number. It's just not a number. Generally speaking, you would use this if you wanted to know if something was a number or not. So you would say if equals to not a number, then do this thing, because you would want to know that it's not a number. And the next one is null, used similarly to nan, basically. It's also just good to know how null and nan work. And I've done some basic arithmetic for all of this. So you can see I've done some addition, positive, negative, 0, decimal. I've done some subtraction with all of them, some multiplication, some division, and I've also done some modulo. Now, modulo is an interesting one because modulo is something you've probably never seen before, but let me kind of explain how it works. This doesn't make any sense to me. I'm going to have to look up what modulo does because I already forgot. How does modulo work? Well, 9. It's the remainder. It's the remainder. Gotcha. So modulo, something you've probably never seen before, all it does is calculate the remainder of positive divided by 3, which is 0. Negative 7, negative 1. 0 is 0. 0 divided by 3 is 0. And decimal is divided by 3 is, I guess, the remainder is that number. So that's kind of how modulo works. So ideally you would use modulo to determine if something is even or odd. That's one use, just off the top of my head. So it's pretty useful. I don't use it that often, but when you do need it, it does the job really well. That's weird. You'll know what I mean when you get to use it. There's some situations where it is the thing to do. Also, I've shown some examples here of what mathematics with nan does. If you do mathematics with a nan, it's a nan. It's still not a number. So because it's not a number. And if you do mathematics with null, it's just nothing. It's just an absence of value, which is kind of like 0. There's also undefined, but I don't think you can really do arithmetics with undefined, so we're not mentioning it here. And there's also incrementing and decrementing. Incrementing and decrementing is peculiar, because you'll notice I have examples of some stuff before the variable positive and stuff after the variable positive. And to explain what that means, if you were to go positive plus plus, it would equal 4 because positive is 3. And I did this sequentially, so obviously I don't reset positive. Positive gets changed literally in this case. So positive plus plus means if you're doing some sort of algorithm that is more complex than an equation, it would increment at the end of the statement. And positive minus minus would increment before the statement even starts, right? So if I were to do like if 2 plus equals plus plus positive, positive would already equal 1. If I did 2 equals positive plus plus, positive would not be equal to 1 until that algorithm, the if statement, is done. We haven't done if statements, but just kind of an example. We'll be seeing some of that later. Works the same with decrementing. I don't know why I said incrementing without decrementing. I'll change that on the GitHub when I push that up. Decrementing is just minus minus or minus minus before. So it's essentially the same concept. So that's about it for algorithms. Go ahead, play around with it. You guys this is a playground. You need to play with this stuff. You need to mess with it, see what you can do. I've already kind of done some of that for you, but I'm sure you have more questions. So just do it, console.log that shit like crazy and see what happens. Get a feel for it, because that's really how you're going to learn. You're going to learn from doing this shit. So I'll see you guys next time, and we'll be talking about strings next time. Okay, bye-bye.